£700 million. That's roughly how much Real Madrid generated in revenue before selling a single player. Not transfer profit, not owner investment, not debt, revenue. Enough money to buy an entirely new squad every summer and still keep the lights on. Now compare that to hundreds of professional clubs across Europe that lose money almost every year, despite selling tickets, shirts, and television rights. So here's the question that quietly shapes almost every decision in modern football. How do football clubs actually make money? Because once you understand where the money comes from, transfer decisions stop looking emotional. Manager sackings start making sense. And suddenly, football starts looking less like a sport and more like a multinational business that happens to play on Saturdays. For most of football history, clubs survived the same way local businesses survived. Fans bought tickets. Those ticket sales paid the wages. Bigger crowds meant bigger clubs. Then television arrived. The creation of the Premier League in 1992 changed the economics of football more than any tactical innovation ever could. For the first time, broadcasters were willing to pay enormous sums simply for the right to show matches. A football club no longer needed 50,000 people inside a stadium. It needed 50 million people in front of televisions. That single shift transformed clubs from local institutions into global media companies. Today, most major clubs operate using three main streams of income, and understanding them explains almost everything else. The first is matchday revenue. This is the oldest form of football income and also the easiest to understand. Ticket sales, hospitality packages, VIP boxes, food, drinks, stadium tours, and museums all sit inside this category. Think of it as the restaurant side of the business. The more customers you can physically fit into your building, the more money you make. This is why stadium size matters so much. Manchester United regularly generate over £130 million per year from match days, largely because Old Trafford can hold more than 74,000 people. Tottenham Hotspur built a £1 billion stadium partly because modern football venues don't just sell football tickets anymore. They sell concerts, NFL games, conferences, and corporate events. A stadium that sits empty 6 days a week is an expensive luxury. A stadium that generates money every day becomes an asset. The second source is broadcasting revenue. This is where modern football truly changed. The Premier League sells television rights around the world and distributes that money to clubs every season. Simply appearing in the league guarantees clubs tens of millions before a ball is kicked. Finishing higher in the table brings more money. Being selected for live television broadcasts brings more money. Qualifying for European competitions brings even more. The Champions League in particular operates almost like a second domestic league financially. Reaching the competition is valuable. Winning matches is valuable. Progressing through knockout rounds becomes even more valuable. By the time Real Madrid won the Champions League in 2024, UEFA prize money alone was worth well over €100 million. Suddenly, a quarterfinal isn't just a sporting achievement. It's a financial event. The third source is commercial revenue. This is the category that separates the giants from everyone else. Commercial income includes shirt sponsorships, kit manufacturers, regional partnerships, licensing agreements, and merchandise sales. If matchday revenue is your restaurant business and television money is your broadcasting deal, commercial revenue is your brand value. This explains one of the strangest realities in football. Manchester United have often generated more commercial revenue than clubs that performed better on the pitch. Because sponsors don't only buy trophies, they buy attention. A company paying to appear on the shirt of Barcelona isn't buying 90 minutes of football. It's buying hundreds of millions of supporters spread across continents. The badge itself becomes advertising space. And that's before player popularity enters the equation. When Cristiano Ronaldo joined Juventus in 2018, the club sold hundreds of thousands of shirts almost immediately. Shirt sales alone didn't cover the transfer fee, as many headlines suggested, because clubs only receive a fraction of retail sales after manufacturers and retailers take their share. But Ronaldo increased sponsorship opportunities, international attention, and commercial leverage. The player wasn't just an athlete, he was an economic asset. Of course, football clubs don't keep all this money. They spend it just as quickly. Player wages usually consume the largest share of revenue. For many clubs, that figure sits somewhere between 60 and 70%. Transfer fees add another layer of complexity. When a club buys a player for £100 million on a 5-year contract, accounting rules don't treat that as spending £100 million immediately. Instead, the cost is spread across the contract length. Think of buying a car using monthly payments rather than handing over the entire amount on day one. Football calls this amortisation. The accounting term sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. Spread the cost over time. That's why clubs can afford transfer windows that look impossible from the outside. The bill arrives in installments. But there is a catch. If spending consistently grows faster than revenue, eventually the numbers stop working. This is why financial fair play exists. Financial fair play, usually shortened to FFP, doesn't stop clubs from spending money. It tries to stop clubs from spending dramatically more than they generate. The closest everyday comparison is a household budget. You can borrow for a mortgage. You can invest in your future. But if your expenses permanently exceed your income, eventually somebody asks difficult questions. Football regulators do exactly the same thing. Recent years have shown what happens when those questions arrive. Everton received points deductions for breaching Premier League profitability and sustainability rules. Those regulations don't limit spending directly. They limit how much money clubs are allowed to lose over a rolling period of several seasons. Meanwhile, clubs with enormous global fan bases continue to enjoy advantages that are difficult for smaller rivals to replicate. A club with 100 million supporters has access to sponsorship opportunities that a club with 1 million supporters simply doesn't. Success creates money. Money helps create success. And football has spent the last 30 years trying to decide how much of that cycle should be allowed to continue. Which brings us back to the original question. Football clubs don't survive by selling football. They survive by selling attention. Attention to broadcasters, attention to sponsors, attention to supporters around the world. The match itself remains the product, but increasingly the real business happens everywhere around it. And perhaps that's the strangest truth in modern football. The most valuable thing inside a stadium isn't the grass, the seats, or even the players. It's the eyes watching them. Which of the 3 pillars do you think your club depends on most right now? And is that a strength or a vulnerability? Leave your answer in the comments. And if you want to understand what happens when one of those pillars suddenly collapses, subscribe. That's exactly what we're covering next.